I told you I was going to give you an example of manipulation. I gave you the example that I'm trying to manipulate you now by talking to you about all these things. But in number 9, I'm going to give you some real world examples of why manipulation is a good thing to do, a healthy thing to do. Number 9 is going to surprise you a little bit. Number 9, you must always be in investigative mode. You must always be in investigative mode. Now, when I say investigative mode, I don't mean that you parked outside somebody's house. I don't mean that you're following your coworkers home. I don't mean that you're digging into the background of everybody. I'm talking about investigative mode in terms of being psychologically minded. Now, you've heard me say that you should always be situationally aware. And in this day and time, Lord knows we need to be. You walk into a restaurant, a crowded room, you need to take stock of where you are and who's in there. I always do that. I've done that for 45 years. It's natural to me now. I've taught it to my boys. I have a son on tour right now, and he's in arenas with 25,000 people. I insist that he be situationally aware. Management for the tour meets with all of them before they go on stage and discuss exit routes, rally points, all of those things. They're situationally aware that things can go south, particularly in this day and time. You should always be situationally aware. If I walk into a restaurant and sit down and it's crowded, I scan the crowd and look for the most unstable people in there. I mark them. I look where they are. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. But in my mind, I find the most unstable people in there. Because if something's going to go south, I figure it's going to be from one of those people. I need to know where they are and who they are. I'm asking you to do more than be situationally aware. I'm asking you to be actively in investigative mode. Because if we can agree that the majority of life is a competition, then you need to be proactively in investigative mode, constantly gathering data and information. Now, baiters do this, and they misuse the information. I want you to do it to use the information. You remember when I was talking about being a trial scientist at Courtroom Sciences, and I said we won cases because we out-prepared the other side. And what I meant by out-prepare them was we were in investigative mode. We discovered everything. We dug up everything there was to dig up. And we weren't afraid to ask ourselves the hard questions about our own case. Some people are in denial. They don't want to look at the negatives about their own case. And then they get blindsided with them at trial. That never happened with us. We looked at the most horrible things about our own case before we ever got to trial. We were never ambushed because we took a harder look than they could ever look because we knew where the bodies were buried and they didn't. I'm asking you to out-prepare everybody in your life. You need to be psychologically minded. And by that, I mean you need to understand what's the psychological situation of everybody that you're in competition with. What are their agendas? What are their motivations? What's going on in someone's life? What are the groups, maybe at work? Are there alliances? Certain people hang together. Are there warring factions? And if you're going to be psychologically minded, you need to be keenly aware that things often occur for other than the apparent reasons. So you've got to be psychologically minded. You've got to be aware if you are in competition for a promotion or a raise or an assignment, then you need to be aware of what other people's strengths and weaknesses are. If you want your boss to see you as essential, then you need to know what he or she is not good at, so you can make sure they're aware that you are good at that. Now, let's talk about manipulation for a second. Let's say that one of the goals that you've set is you want the guy you're dating to pop the question. You're wanting to motivate him to pop the question. Now, is that wrong? Is there anything wrong with you wanting him to pop the question? I say no. If you've made the decision that this is the guy, if you're in love with him, but he's dragging his feet, you need to be in investigative mode and you need to be psychologically evaluating what's his problem? What are the obstacles here? What's his motivation or lack thereof? I believe very much in need satisfaction selling. Maybe his parents have been through an ugly divorce. And so he is afraid of what can happen when you get married, that it can wind up in an ugly divorce. Then psychologically, you are aware he needs reassurance in this area. His fears need to be diffused in this area. If you're in investigative mode and you find out that his parents have been through an ugly divorce, that he is very burned by that, he has great concerns about that. Now, you've been in investigative mode, you've learned that, you've found out how he feels about that, what was done to impact him about that. So you know what he needs. He needs to be reassured, he needs to have those fears diffused. So this is where the manipulation comes in. You don't need to be insidious about it, but when you talk to him about this and you talk about where's this relationship going, do you want to talk about what kind of house you're going to get? Or do you want to talk about what is important in your relationship with him? What things that you two should find some peace about? Address the needs he has. And in doing that, you're doing a service to him. You're talking about what matters to him. You're giving him an opportunity to voice his concerns, his needs, his fears. Is that manipulative? Sure it is. Is that insidious? Absolutely not. You can tell him straight up, I know, I sense that you have been burned by your parents having a very ugly breakup. I want to talk about that. I want to see if we can get past that. Okay, now there's nothing insidious about this at all. You're telling him, I want to talk about that. I want to see if we can get past that. I want to see if I can get you at ease with that. So that's just another way of saying, I want to manipulate your thinking from a pathological fear to a healthy acknowledgement and acceptance. And I would have no problem, zero, zip, absolutely no problem with you saying, okay, I want to try and manipulate your thinking about this. I want to change your thinking about it. I want to alter the way you think about this. I have no problem with using the word manipulation. I have no problem with using the word change. Be totally upfront about it. But do your homework before you start, because you want to talk about what matters to them, to him, to the people at work, whoever your audience is. My belief is you will be successful if you meet people where they are instead of expecting them to meet you where you are. If they are steeped in fear, if they are paralyzed with fear and anxiety about what may happen, you're going to get old waiting for them to resolve that on their own and come to you. Why should you do that? Why should you not call it what it is and make a upfront, totally transparent effort to get them past that? And if you can't, don't you want to know it? Of course you do. If that is such a pathological anxiety that they'll never get past it, you need to know that now, not later. So what I'm saying is be completely upfront, nothing insidious, nothing underhanded, nothing behind their back, nothing sneaking up on them, nothing where they don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it, but do it. Be straight up front. Do you think I don't do that every day on Dr. Phil? Of course I do. Somebody comes in there and says, I am not a drug addict and I don't need rehab. Do you think I don't set about manipulating their thinking about that to get them to the help they need? Of course I do. And I tell them straight up, I'm going to talk you out of that. I'm going to show you where you're wrong. When you are in investigative mode, you are going to discover if people have insidious objectives in dealing with you and are trying to manipulate you with a hidden agenda. Because by you doing it transparently, you will become keenly aware of when it's being attempted insidiously.